Have you ever trusted someone so completely that their betrayal felt like losing your breath? Share your story in the comments below and tell me what time you're reading this from. Don't forget to subscribe. Your support means everything to me. On my 80th birthday, my family abandoned me to feast alone while they used my savings to vacation in Hawaii. So I transferred everything to charity while they were gone and waited to see their faces when they returned home empty-handed. It was supposed to be the most memorable 80th birthday celebration. Something I hadn't experienced in years was promised to me by my own flesh and blood. A touch of joy, some light, and an opportunity to feel valued once more. I selected my finest outfit that morning. I prepared a feast. I waited with hopeful anticipation. However, the events that unfolded that day completely changed how I viewed everyone in my world. I may be aging, but I'm certainly not blind. And I'm definitely not helpless. Thank you for allowing me to share my heart before I begin this tale. Please tell me in the comments what time it is and where you're listening from. I truly love hearing from you. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. You have no idea how much your support helps me. Now let me tell you what really happened that changed everything. I had spent months looking forward to that special trip. Back in March, my daughter Sarah informed me that they were organizing something extraordinary for my 80th birthday. A real adventure, she said with excitement. Somewhere tropical and beautiful. Just pack your prettiest dresses, Mom. Leave everything else to us. That moment filled me with such happiness I nearly dropped my teacup. I hadn't traveled anywhere except the pharmacy or doctor's office in years. Since my dear Robert passed, I hadn't seen an ocean. When I asked Sarah about the cost, she brushed off my concerns. Didn't you work your whole life for this? You deserve it, Mom. We've got everything covered. A week later, she needed my credit card to book the family package and secure the best rates. After a moment's hesitation, I trusted my daughter completely. I handed it over without too many questions. We'll leave sometime in late May or early June, she promised. I asked about the exact dates when May came and went. We're just coordinating everyone's schedule, she explained. It'll be right around your birthday. I promise. I believed her. I even bought a brand new suitcase. Lavender-colored. On clearance. I kept it by the front door with the tag still attached. I spent 2 weeks packing it slowly. I laid out my favorite sundress with the tropical print. My comfortable walking shoes from last summer. I hadn't worn a sun hat in 10 years. I also tucked in Robert's favorite handkerchief. Just for comfort, I felt like he'd be with us in spirit. But Sarah called the evening before my birthday. Her voice sounded rushed, like she was multitasking. I hate to tell you this, Mom, but we need to postpone the trip just a little bit, she said. My heart sank. Oh, how little. Just a few more weeks, maybe. We're having some last-minute scheduling conflicts. I understand. So at least I'll see you all tomorrow for dinner. There was a pause. Of course, she replied. I wouldn't dream of missing it. We'll definitely be there. That was enough for me. I tried to sound understanding. Plans do change, after all. Life gets complicated. I told myself it was perfectly fine. At least I'd have my family with me. So on the morning of my 80th birthday, I woke up before dawn and put on my favorite gospel music. I brewed fresh coffee and began cooking everything from scratch. Herb-crusted salmon, garlic mashed potatoes, fresh asparagus, and glazed carrots. I baked a lemon cake from my grandmother's recipe. Used real butter this time, not margarine. I even brought down the fine china from the highest shelf, the set with the delicate rose pattern I saved for special occasions. I set the dining room table for 6. Myself, Sarah, her husband Michael, their son Jake, their daughter Emma, and maybe Mrs. Patterson from across the street if they invited her for dessert. I dressed in the emerald green dress Robert always said brought out my eyes. I styled my silver hair carefully. Applied a touch of coral lipstick. I lit the tall white candles I usually reserved for Christmas dinner. The house smelled like pure love and anticipation. By 4 o'clock, I was completely ready. By 5, I started feeling anxious. By 6, I had reheated everything once. By 7, I stopped peeking out the window. By 8, I was sitting at that beautiful table completely alone. The candles had burned down to stubs. The food had gone cold. My lipstick had faded away. I stared at those empty chairs across from me and desperately tried to convince myself that maybe something unexpected had happened. Maybe they just got caught up in traffic. Maybe Emma had gotten sick. Maybe their car had broken down. Maybe their phones had died. But deep in my heart, I already knew the truth. Nobody was coming to celebrate with me. My hands shook as I picked up my fork. I could barely swallow a few bites. The food tasted like sadness now. I pushed the plate away and rested my chin in my palms. I looked at the birthday card I had optimistically bought for myself at the drugstore. It read "Another year of blessings" in silver script. It had seemed perfect when I selected it. Now it felt like a cruel joke. I cried then, not dramatically, just quietly. The kind of tears that escape when you've been holding them back all day long. My shoulders trembled. I wiped my eyes with my cloth napkin and sat in that deafening silence, letting the pain wash over me completely. Nobody called. Nobody texted. Not even a simple "Happy birthday, Mom." Around 10:30, I wrapped the cake in aluminum foil and stored everything in the refrigerator. I blew out those melted candles. I changed into my nightgown. I sat on my bed's edge and stared at that lavender suitcase by the closet. Still packed with hope. Still waiting for promises that would never come. I turned off the bedside lamp and lay down carefully, the arthritis in my hips more pronounced than usual. I watched the ceiling fan rotate slowly, its quiet whirring the only sound in my empty room. I folded my hands across my chest and whispered, maybe they simply forgot. I desperately tried to believe that possibility. But somewhere in my soul, I understood the truth. They hadn't forgotten anything. They just chose not to come. The morning after my 80th birthday, I awoke to a house that felt completely different. Not the peaceful kind of quiet. The abandoned kind. I sat on my bed's edge for what felt like hours, staring at that little lavender suitcase I had packed and repacked for weeks. The price tag still dangled from the handle, untouched. Part of me still wanted to believe the trip was simply delayed like Sarah had promised, that it would happen eventually, that I just needed to be more patient. I went through my morning routine mechanically, brushed my teeth with trembling hands, wrapped my hair in its silk scarf, shuffled to the kitchen in my worn slippers. But everything felt sluggish, like I was moving underwater. I made chamomile tea but couldn't bring myself to drink it. Opened the refrigerator, saw the untouched cake, closed it immediately. I didn't have the energy to reheat yesterday's feast. The dishes from last night still sat in the sink, waiting. I couldn't face them either. I settled on the living room sofa, wrapped in Robert's old wool blanket, the one that still carried hints of his cologne and pipe tobacco. I stared at the hardwood floor for a very long time, listening to the grandfather clock steady ticking. It was nearly 1 o'clock, and still no contact. No phone calls. No text messages. Not even a belated "sorry we missed celebrating with you, Mom." I held on to that tiny thread of hope that perhaps today they'd reach out. Maybe they had confused the date somehow. Then I heard a gentle knock. 3 polite taps at the front door. I rose slowly and peeked through the lace curtains. It was Marcus, the sweet college student who lived in the apartment complex next door, always respectful, always checking on me after storms. His late grandmother had raised him with proper manners. I opened the door with effort. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Thompson," he said, holding a small paper bag and offering a genuine smile. "I picked up that lavender soap you mentioned liking." "Oh, bless your thoughtful heart," I said, stepping aside gratefully. "Please come in, dear." He entered and placed the bag on my kitchen counter. I was about to offer him some leftover cake when he noticed my tablet sitting on the coffee table. "Are you still having trouble with your social media apps?" he asked, picking it up carefully. I nodded wearily. "It keeps freezing up on me again. You know how hopeless I am with technology. I touch the wrong thing and everything disappears completely." Marcus chuckled warmly. "Let me take a quick look for you." He settled into the armchair, swiping through various settings. I returned to wiping the counter just to keep my hands busy and my mind occupied. Then I heard him pause mid-swipe. "Mrs. Thompson," he said very gently, "didn't you mention that your daughter was planning to take you on a special vacation for your birthday?" I turned toward him slowly, my heart already beginning to race. "Yes, she said it was going to be a wonderful family trip. But the night before my birthday, she called and said it needed to be postponed for scheduling reasons." "Why do you ask?" He hesitated, then glanced down at the tablet screen. "I didn't mean to invade your privacy," he said carefully, "but I follow your granddaughter Emma on Instagram, and I think you should see this." He turned the tablet around to show me. There, crystal clear as daylight, was a pristine beach with white sand and impossibly blue water. And right in the center of the image stood my entire family. My daughter Sarah, her husband Michael, and both grandchildren Jake and Emma, all wearing matching t-shirts that proclaimed Thompson Family Paradise. They were grinning widely, beautifully tanned, holding colorful tropical drinks, and posing beside an enormous resort infinity pool. The caption read, "Much needed family reset, Thompson Family Vacation Hawaii 2024 #blessed life no worries." It had been posted yesterday evening. On my birthday. I stared at that photograph, completely frozen. My mouth fell open, but no words emerged. I slowly reached out with trembling fingers and took the tablet from Marcus, zooming in closer. This wasn't just a weekend getaway. This was a complete luxury vacation. The kind with 5-star resorts and spa treatments and gourmet dining experiences. I scrolled to the next post. Michael was lounging poolside with an expensive cocktail in his hand. Another showed Sarah twirling in a designer sundress with champagne flute raised high. There was even a photo of Emma showing off her new diamond bracelet. I kept scrolling and scrolling. Image after image of pure indulgence, but no mention of me anywhere. Not a single reference. Marcus sat quietly beside me. I could tell he was struggling to find appropriate words. I swallowed the enormous lump forming in my throat and set the tablet down very gently. "They told me it was postponed," I whispered hoarsely. "Said we'd reschedule everything. Said they'd definitely come for birthday dinner." I felt the familiar sting behind my eyes before the tears began flowing. I blinked rapidly, hoping desperately to hold them back, but it was completely useless. My shoulders began shaking uncontrollably. I pressed both palms flat against the coffee table to steady myself. "They abandoned me," I said in barely a whisper. "They really abandoned me completely." Marcus stood up and knelt beside my chair, his voice incredibly soft and kind. "I'm so deeply sorry, Mrs. Thompson. I thought surely you knew about the trip. If I had realized." "It's not your fault, sweetheart," I managed, wiping my cheeks with the back of my hand. "It's mine for trusting them so completely." He didn't argue with me. He simply sat with me in my pain. That's what made everything so much worse. How someone who owed me absolutely nothing could sit with me in my heartbreak, while the people I had raised, clothed, fed, and sacrificed for had excluded me like I was completely worthless. After Marcus left, I sat in complete silence for what felt like hours. Then something deep within me began to stir. I needed to understand the full scope of their deception. I turned on my ancient desktop computer and logged into my email account. I hadn't checked it in several weeks. Sarah had always told me not to worry about such things. Said she handled all the important bills and bookings through it for my convenience. But I remembered one crucial password, and that was all I needed. I typed reservation into the search bar with shaking fingers. The first result made my heart stop beating. An email confirmation from a luxury Hawaiian resort. Complete week-long booking. Ocean View Presidential Suite. Premium spa packages included. All paid in advance with full amenities. Billing name: Dorothy Thompson. Credit card: mine. The same card Sarah had asked to hold for emergencies just last month. I stared at that computer screen with trembling hands. My stomach twisted into knots. They hadn't simply forgotten about me. They had deliberately used me. They had used my own money against me. Lied directly to my face with practiced ease. taken the vacation that was rightfully mine, toasted their deception with tropical drinks, and left me to cry alone over cold birthday cake. I closed the laptop with determination, pushed my chair back decisively, and stood up with renewed purpose. I walked to the hallway mirror and looked at myself with clear eyes. Not a fragile, helpless old woman. A mother who had been taken for granted far too long. A woman who had remained silent when she should have spoken up. And for the first time in years, I felt something fundamental shift deep inside me. Not bitterness or hatred. Just perfect, crystalline clarity. After I discovered that booking confirmation email, something within me went completely still. Not numb or defeated. Just quiet and focused. Like my spirit had finally sat down to catch its breath and plan its next move. I didn't call Sarah immediately. I didn't send angry text messages. I didn't throw dishes or slam cabinet doors. That simply isn't who I am. I just stood in my hallway, looking deeply at my reflection in that old mirror. The same one Robert had hung when we first bought this house 40 years ago. I studied myself carefully and thoroughly. I saw every wrinkle that told stories. Every age spot that marked years of living. Every laugh line that now curved into something much sadder. But I didn't feel weak or defeated. I felt completely awake for the first time in months. The next afternoon, I received a phone call from Michael. His voice dripped with artificial sweetness, as if absolutely nothing had happened. He said they were back home and so incredibly sorry we missed your special day, Mrs. T. Like he hadn't had my phone number for the entire week. Then he casually mentioned that Sarah was planning to stop by soon and bring you something really nice. I didn't engage in lengthy conversation. I simply said all right and hung up immediately. Sure enough, Sarah appeared at my doorstep that evening around 7. She didn't even bother knocking politely. Just walked in exactly like she used to when she was a rebellious teenager. I was in the kitchen, folding clean dish towels methodically. I didn't even glance up at her. Hi Mom, she said casually, like she'd simply returned from a quick grocery store run. We brought you this special treat. She placed an elegant white bakery box on my dining table. Inside was a single slice of expensive chocolate cake from some upscale bakery downtown. Wrapped like it belonged at a wedding reception, not a belated birthday acknowledgement. I looked at that cake with new eyes. Then I looked directly at her with the same clarity. Is that what you brought back from Hawaii? I asked calmly. Her confident smile faltered for just a split second. Just long enough for me to notice. Then she laughed nervously. Oh, so you saw our vacation photos. I figured you might. I saw absolutely everything, I said with steady voice. The drinks, the resort, the matching shirts, the bracelet on Emma's wrist, the spa treatments, all of it. On my birthday. Using my money. Sarah scratched her neck uncomfortably and shrugged with practiced indifference. Mom, we honestly didn't think you'd want to travel that far anymore. You get exhausted so easily these days. It would have been too much stress for you. That's not what you told me directly. You told me it was postponed for scheduling conflicts. We changed plans at the last minute, she said dismissively. It really wasn't that significant, Mom. I stepped around the kitchen counter very slowly. My voice remained calm, but I could feel intense heat building in my chest. You used my credit card, Sarah. You paid for that entire luxury vacation in my name without my knowledge or permission. Her head snapped back like I had physically slapped her. What? It wasn't like that at all. You gave me the card for legitimate emergencies. I figured you'd be completely fine with it once you saw how much we all enjoyed ourselves. You figured, I repeated slowly. You figured that your mother, who cooked a complete feast and set her finest table and put on her best dress for her 80th birthday, would be perfectly fine being lied to, excluded completely, and forced to pay for her own abandonment. Sarah looked genuinely annoyed now, her patience wearing thin. Mom, it was just one birthday celebration. You've had 79 others. This really isn't worth getting so upset about. My hands began trembling with rage. I gripped the edge of the counter for support. Just one birthday, I repeated in disbelief. It was my first birthday without your father, and I thought, maybe, just maybe, you actually wanted to spend it with me instead of running away from me using my own money." She groaned dramatically and collapsed into the nearest chair like she was completely exhausted by my emotional response. "You're being overly dramatic about this, Mom. It's really not that serious." I blinked, absolutely stunned by her callousness. "Dramatic?" "Yes," she snapped impatiently. "It's not like we left you with absolutely nothing. You had plenty of food. You always say you don't need much attention. Why is this suddenly becoming some major crisis?" I stepped backward, my heart pounding violently in my chest. I thought about how I used to rock her to sleep during thunderstorms, how I worked double shifts so she could take dance lessons, how I sold my grandmother's jewelry to pay for her college tuition, how I prayed every single night for her safety and happiness and success. I thought about how she used to crawl into my bed during scary movies and call me her hero and best friend. And now here she stood, telling me I should be grateful for scraps, telling me my pain was inconvenient and excessive. I sat down across from her at that same table where I'd taught her to do homework and listened to her teenage heartbreak. I looked directly into the eyes of the woman I had raised with unconditional love. "I'm your mother, Sarah. Not your personal ATM machine." She didn't respond immediately. I didn't cry this time, not in front of her. I simply stood back up and walked over to get the broom from the pantry closet. "You can leave now," I said quietly but firmly. She looked up, genuinely surprised by my dismissal. "Mom, I think we should talk about this more." "I need to sweep," I interrupted calmly. "And I don't like sweeping around things that don't belong in my house anymore." She rose slowly from the chair, and for just a moment she looked like she wanted to say something meaningful. But nothing came out of her mouth. She left without another word, letting the door slam behind her. That evening, I sat on my back porch under the string lights Robert had installed years ago for our anniversary celebrations. I rocked back and forth in my favorite chair with a soft blanket around my shoulders. I didn't cry, but I didn't smile either. I just let the cool evening air touch my face gently and listened to the crickets sing their ancient songs of comfort. I still loved my daughter deeply, but I couldn't unsee what I had witnessed. And I couldn't unfeel what I had experienced. I thought that might be the end of our confrontation, that perhaps we'd eventually talk again and smooth everything over like mothers and daughters always seem to do. But something was approaching that would force me to see everything with even greater clarity. And this time, I absolutely would not look away. I wasn't actively seeking more trouble. I simply needed some practical assistance. A few weeks after that painful argument with Sarah, my finances were stretched thinner than usual. I was running dangerously low on groceries, and the heating bill had arrived much higher than I had budgeted for. I didn't panic or despair. I'd survived much worse situations in my lifetime. I simply figured I'd need to borrow a modest amount until my pension check arrived. Marcus, bless his generous heart, had mentioned a retired family court judge who volunteered at the community center, Judge Patricia Williams. He said she specialized in helping elderly women access legal advice and financial support services. "She's incredibly sharp, Mrs. Thompson," he told me earnestly. "Doesn't tolerate any nonsense. I think you'd really appreciate her direct approach." I didn't want to burden anyone unnecessarily, but I made the call anyway. She came to my house the very next afternoon. Tall, elegant woman with natural silver hair styled in a sophisticated cut, piercing intelligent eyes, and a no-nonsense voice that still carried genuine warmth and compassion. She arrived wearing a crisp navy blazer and comfortable walking shoes, carrying a professional leather briefcase filled with organized folders. "Mrs. Thompson," she said, shaking my hand with a firm, confident grip. "You mentioned needing some financial guidance." "Just a little help," I replied, gesturing for her to sit comfortably. "I might need to borrow a small amount just to get through this month. I'm not behind on anything serious, just experiencing a particularly tight budget." She gave me a very careful, assessing look. "Do you mind if I ask, don't you have a retirement account established? Any personal savings accumulated over the years?" I nodded slowly. "I do. I mean, I should. But my daughter has been helping me manage everything financial. She said it would be easier that way. Judge Williams set her briefcase down deliberately. And how actively involved are you in that financial management process? I hesitated, suddenly feeling foolish. She has all the login information. She handles bill payments. Said she'd take care of all the complicated paperwork so I wouldn't have to worry about boring details. The judge leaned forward with focused attention. Would you mind accessing your online banking right now, just so we can take a quick look together? I want to make sure everything is exactly where it should be. I didn't want to embarrass myself further, but something in her professional tone told me I should definitely listen. So I opened my old laptop computer and let her sit beside me at the kitchen table. It took several attempts, but I finally managed to access my account. I noticed the problem before she even spoke a single word. The balance looked completely wrong. Drastically wrong. She scrolled through the transaction history quietly, not commenting yet. I sat beside her with my heart pounding frantically, watching her increasingly serious expression. When she finally turned to face me directly, she didn't speak like a detached legal professional. She spoke like a woman who had witnessed far too many identical stories. Mrs. Thompson, she said with gentle but firm authority, your account has been systematically drained over the past 18 months. We're talking about multiple unauthorized withdrawals, tens of thousands of dollars, mostly transferred directly to a secondary account that I assume belongs to your daughter. I felt ice-cold dread wash over me completely. That must be Sarah's account. She's been handling all my financial responsibilities for my convenience. Judge Williams tapped her pen against a specific line on the screen. Look at this pattern carefully. Resort charges, jewelry purchases, electronics, even several payments labeled as consulting services. But they're all routed through her personal account, not any legitimate business account. This isn't financial assistance, Mrs. Thompson. This is systematic financial abuse. My throat constricted painfully. She's just been under tremendous stress lately. She told me their family finances were extremely tight. She's trying to build something meaningful for their future. Judge Williams gave me a look that wasn't cruel or judgmental, but absolutely realistic and direct. Dorothy, she said, using my first name with respectful familiarity, you are not a bank. And you are certainly not here to be financially bled dry while maintaining a grateful smile. This is elder abuse, and it's completely unacceptable. I blinked rapidly as my lips began trembling uncontrollably. But she's my daughter, my only child. And you're her mother, she replied without hesitation. And you are worth infinitely more than how she's currently treating you. You raised her with love and sacrifice. You worked incredibly hard your entire life. You don't owe her everything you've built and saved. I sat completely motionless. My hands were folded so tightly they began to ache. Judge Williams closed the laptop very gently and looked at me with compassionate understanding. You said you wanted help. I can absolutely provide that help. But only if you're truly ready to stop allowing your natural kindness to be transformed into exploitable weakness. I didn't answer immediately. I looked down at those familiar kitchen tiles and thought about all the years I had spent scrubbing those same floors on my hands and knees. Thought about how I had saved every single receipt and coupon. How I had skipped hair salon appointments so Sarah could have piano lessons. How I had never once let her see how terrified I was when money ran short. I thought about how I had waited hopefully on my birthday for a celebration that never materialized. And how the people I had given my entire life to had used my own savings to toast their deception under palm trees while I sat alone with cold cake. I don't want to hurt her, I whispered with anguish. You're not hurting anyone, Judge Williams said firmly. She's already hurt you severely. We're simply going to stop the bleeding. We didn't complete that difficult conversation that day. I needed time to process everything I had learned. Judge Williams understood my hesitation completely. She left me her business card and said to contact her immediately if anything else concerning happened. It didn't take long at all. Because the very next week, Sarah showed up at my door again, smiling brightly and full of exciting plans. "Hey Mom," she said, stepping inside like she owned the place. "I've got some really fantastic news to share with you. I found the perfect house for us to invest in." I raised my eyebrows with newfound skepticism. "Oh really?" She settled into my kitchen chair like it was her personal throne. "It's a genuine fixer-upper with incredible potential in a rapidly developing neighborhood. I need to put in an offer before someone else snatches it up. The market is absolutely crazy right now. I need $60,000 to secure the down payment and closing costs. I figured maybe you could advance me part of my inheritance now, while you're still here to see me benefit from it directly." That was the precise moment when all remaining air left my lungs like a devastating punch to my chest. I looked her directly in the face with complete clarity. She didn't even flinch or show embarrassment. She genuinely believed she was entitled to every penny of the life I had built through decades of hard work and sacrifice. "I don't have that kind of money available," I said with steady voice. She leaned back in the chair with obvious irritation. "Of course you do. You just don't want to help your own daughter succeed." My voice remained completely flat and emotionless. "You've been helping yourself quite generously, Sarah. I've seen all the charges. Every single transaction." Her entire expression changed dramatically. "Excuse me. What are you talking about?" "I saw the resort charges. The jewelry purchases. The spa treatments. The electronics. You've been systematically draining my account for over a year without my knowledge or permission." She stood up abruptly, her face flushing with anger. "You went through my private financial business." "No," I said, standing as well with newfound strength. "I went through mine. My money. My account. My retirement savings that you've been stealing." She scoffed with practiced indignation. "So what? You're going to cut me off completely now? After absolutely everything I've done for you over the years?" "You mean using me," I said with crystalline clarity. "Lying to me. Abandoning me on my birthday while you partied and celebrated on my dime. That's what you've done. You do this," she snapped venomously, "and you're going to be completely alone. Don't call me when you need something important because I won't be there." I walked over to the kitchen counter, picked up Judge Williams' business card, and looked my daughter directly in the eyes with absolute resolve. "I won't need to call you." She stormed out of my house, slamming the door with such force that Robert's portrait rattled on the mantel. I walked over and straightened it carefully with trembling hands. Then I sat down at my kitchen table, looked at the half-folded laundry still waiting in the basket, and laughed softly to myself. Not because any of this situation was amusing, but because the sound of personal strength returning to your own spirit can feel remarkably like joy after months of devastating silence. For too many years, I had believed that maternal love required complete sacrifice. That being a good mother meant giving until I had absolutely nothing left to give. But now I understood the truth with perfect clarity. I wasn't empty or confused or mistaken. I was simply finished being their foundation while they climbed over me to build castles I would never be invited to enter. And for the first time in many years, I looked around my house and felt something wonderful and strange. It belonged to me again. One full year passed quietly, peacefully, like spring flowers blooming through the last frost of winter. I won't lie and pretend some days weren't difficult. The kind of difficult where you sit by your window and wonder if perhaps you were too harsh in your response. If maybe you should have answered when they called repeatedly. But then I'd remember the devastating ache in my chest when I first saw that Hawaii photograph. The way Sarah looked me directly in the face and asked for an advance on my own death. The sharp sting of sitting completely alone at my birthday table wearing a dress I had pressed specifically for their arrival. So no, I didn't answer the phone. Not when Sarah called 6 weeks after I'd locked down all the accounts. Not when she sent a single text message with no punctuation that simply read, "Really Mom, it's like this now." Yes, it was exactly like that. Because when I finally took complete control of my money, my name, and my future, it felt like pulling myself out of a deep well I hadn't even realized I was drowning in. Judge Williams helped me establish everything properly. We filed all the necessary paperwork to transfer my assets completely out of Sarah's reach. We revoked every single authorization she had ever claimed. We disputed suspicious charges, and surprisingly, several were actually refunded to my account. She also connected me with a financial advisor who spoke to me like an intelligent woman who understood the value of every dollar she had ever touched, rather than treating me like I was slow or simple-minded. We also completely rewrote my will. All my remaining savings, bonds, and property would go to a non-profit organization that provides emergency shelter and legal assistance to elderly women who have been financially abused or manipulated by their own family members. I told only 2 people about this decision, Marcus and Judge Williams. Yes, Marcus. Every single week after everything fell apart, that young man continued checking on my well-being. Sometimes he simply changed my light bulbs or brought fresh bread from the bakery. Other times he just sat quietly and listened while I talked about Robert or shared stories about my years working as a seamstress for half the neighborhood. He never asked for anything, never acted like he deserved special treatment. So I didn't set my table for ghosts on my 81st birthday. I made a reservation for the small banquet room at the community center. I ordered real soul food, nothing too fancy or complicated. Fried catfish, collard greens, cornbread, mac and cheese, and coconut cake with cream cheese frosting. I wore a beautiful royal blue dress that made me feel elegant again, and I invited the people who had genuinely shown up when I was at my lowest point. First to arrive was Marcus, carrying a portable speaker playing Aretha Franklin and a bouquet of yellow roses. Next came Judge Williams in her sharp professional attire and that knowing, wise smile. Then arrived several women from the Shelter Foundation, all dressed in their finest clothes, some with walking canes, others with grandchildren trailing behind them. We laughed together. We danced to old music. We shared stories and multiple slices of cake. Then Emma appeared. Yes, my granddaughter Emma. She entered quietly and hesitantly. No dramatic entrance or demands for attention. She stood at the doorway holding a simple birthday card, looking nervous and uncertain. No designer clothes, no expensive jewelry, not a single new bracelet or perfect hairstyle. She appeared genuinely troubled and remorseful. "Grandma," she said softly from the entrance. I didn't know what they were really doing. Honestly, I had no idea. Dad told me you didn't want to travel because you were too tired and weak. I believed him completely, but then I saw the receipts later, and I learned the truth about everything. I looked at her carefully, my only granddaughter who used to be my little kitchen helper, standing on a step stool and using both tiny hands to stir pancake batter. "It hurt deeply, sweetheart," I said, nodding slowly. "Yes, it certainly did." She took a tentative step forward. "May I please stay for a little while?" I took a very long moment to consider my response. Then I took out a clean plate, handed it to her gently, and said, "Go ahead and get yourself some of that coconut cake before Judge Williams eats it all." She joined our circle with a weak but genuine smile that reminded me of the little girl who used to help me bake cookies every Sunday after church. I watched her carefully as she sat down with her plate of coconut cake. Her hands were shaking slightly, and I could see the weight of guilt in her young eyes. She wasn't the same confident teenager from those Hawaii photos anymore. "Grandma," she said quietly, taking a small bite of cake. "I need you to know something. When I turned 18 last month, Mom and Dad tried to get me to sign some papers. They said it was just for college financial aid, but when I read them carefully, they were actually documents trying to get access to a trust fund you had set up for me years ago." Judge Williams looked up sharply from her own slice of cake. "What kind of documents, dear?" Emma pulled out a folded paper from her purse with trembling fingers. "I didn't sign them. I brought them here instead. I thought maybe Grandma should see what they were really planning." I took the papers and handed them to Judge Williams, who scanned them with her professional eye. Her expression grew stern as she read. "These are legal documents attempting to transfer Emma's entire inheritance to your daughter's control, claim 7ing you're mentally incompetent to manage family finances," she said to me directly. "If Emma had signed these, they would have tried to use it as evidence to gain full financial guardianship over you as well." The room fell completely silent except for the soft music still playing in the background. Emma started crying then, not dramatically, but with the kind of tears that come from deep shame and regret. They told me you didn't love us anymore. That you had become mean and selfish. But Mrs. Patterson from across the street told me the truth about your birthday. About how you waited all night. About the food you made. I'm so sorry, Grandma. I'm so incredibly sorry. I reached across the table and took her young hand in my weathered one. Sweetheart, you were a child caught in the middle of adult deceptions. That's not your fault. But I should have called you on your birthday, she whispered. I should have asked more questions. I should have visited you myself instead of believing everything they told me. Marcus, who had been quietly listening to everything, spoke up gently. The important thing is that you're here now, Emma. And you chose to do the right thing when it really mattered. Judge Williams folded the papers carefully and placed them in her briefcase. These documents will be very helpful evidence if your parents try any future legal maneuvers, Dorothy. Emma's refusal to sign them and her decision to bring them to you shows clear intent to protect you from further exploitation. I squeezed Emma's hand and looked around the table at these people who had become my chosen family. You know what I realized this past year? Family isn't just about blood relations. It's about the people who show up when you need them most. Who sit with you in your pain. Who celebrate your joy without expecting anything in return. Emma nodded through her tears. Can I keep visiting you, Grandma? I know I don't deserve it after everything, but I'd like to try to make things right. I considered her request carefully. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. But I could see something genuine in her eyes that I hadn't seen in her parents' faces in years. You can visit, I said finally. But not because you're trying to make up for anything. Only if you truly want to spend time with your grandmother. I won't be anyone's obligation or guilt project anymore. She smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from her all evening. I'd like that very much. As the evening wound down and people began to leave, Emma helped me clean up the remaining dishes. We worked in comfortable silence, and for a moment, I could almost imagine this was how things were supposed to be. Before she left, she turned to me at the door. Grandma, what's going to happen to Mom and Dad? When they find out about the will and everything? I thought about that question carefully. That depends entirely on them, sweetheart. They can choose to learn from this and try to rebuild our relationship with honesty and respect. Or they can continue down the path they're on and live with the consequences of their choices. Emma nodded solemnly. I hope they choose to learn. So do I, dear heart. So do I. After everyone left, I sat in my living room with a cup of chamomile tea, looking at the birthday cards scattered across my coffee table. Real cards, from real friends, filled with genuine warmth and affection. I thought about Sarah and Michael, probably wondering why their latest scheme had failed, probably angry that their carefully constructed plans were falling apart. I felt sorry for them, not the pitying kind of sorry, but the sad recognition that they had chosen greed over love, manipulation over honesty. They would learn about the will eventually, of course. They would discover that their inheritance had been redirected to help other elderly women avoid the pain I had experienced. And perhaps, in that moment of realization, they would finally understand the true cost of their betrayal. But that was their journey to make, their lesson to learn. As for me, I had found something I thought I'd lost forever. My own voice, my own strength, my own worth. I was no longer the woman who waited hopefully at an empty birthday table. I was Dorothy Thompson, 81 years old, surrounded by people who valued me for who I was, not what I could give them. And for the first time in years, that felt like more than enough. I finished my tea, turned off the lights, and went to bed with a peaceful heart, already looking forward to tomorrow.